Good to have you with us in the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate, and on to a conversation point that's actually become a conversation point in every household and in every WhatsApp group, because this one is about WhatsApp, where a privacy debate has been reignited after WhatsApp began to tell its users that they're going to bring in an update and they're going to change their privacy policy. Now, the users will have to update the new policy by February 8th, or they will have to stop using WhatsApp. It's really, that's what it is. WhatsApp has simply said either you agree to these terms and conditions or you don't get to use the platform anymore. Now, here is what happens if you agree to the new terms. Basically, this is the message that you would have already gotten by now about a new policy in the terms of services, where some amount of data sharing with Facebook and its subsidiaries will get enabled. Now, WhatsApp says this is largely business transaction related commercial data. But the concerns really are about what extent and how do you decide what is personal, what is commercial, and if you're actually putting all of your information at risk. Your phone number, your transaction data will get shared with Facebook. Information on how you interact with others will get shared with Facebook. Now, this is data that WhatsApp already has. It has your location, it has your contacts, access to your contacts, to your media files. All of that is already available with WhatsApp. Here is the company telling you we're also going to share it with our sister concern, the Facebook. But it has raised many concerns. In fact, corporates, India Inc. and some of the big names have begun to already caution their employees to not use WhatsApp to share sensitive information. So the companies have begun to tell their people, and this is a story that's come in the Economic Times, that the staff is being told to not use WhatsApp for work purposes, for business communication, to switch to other platforms, and several of those platforms, which I'm sure if you work in one of these agent companies, you already know, you've already tried these platforms. People have been asked to not share sensitive company information on the WhatsApp platform or even make business-related calls from this platform. That's the extent of concern that we're witnessing in our country today. And many people have already begun to shift. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Signal app, and people actually talking amongst their families and friends and even their colleagues of, if we know enough about this app, if it's sensible to shift to this app or to any other app. Now, I'm not going to sit here and advocate one over the other, but I am going to get you a panel of experts and open up the phone lines for if you have any specific concerns and questions about your data and privacy of your data. And I'm going to ask the panelists to tell us whether this policy change really impacts us at the end of the day, or is it simply putting out there what we already knew was happening? Is one platform better than the other? Or are users now really staring at a situation where every few months concerns emerge and then you shift? And does it even help? Or is all of our data already available on internet, and unless we find a way of deleting everything about our existence from the internet, there is really no protecting our privacy? These are the extremes and the kinds of conversations I'm sure you've also had with your people around you. So let's ask the experts instead. And so good evening to Ritesh Bhatia, cybersecurity expert, Nikhil Pava, editor of Media Nama, Vaishali Bhagwat, the cyber lawyer, joins us this evening, Pawan Dugal, also a cyber law advocate with the Supreme Court, and Pavel Naya, senior analyst with Counterpoint Research, also joining us. All of them have huge amount of expertise when it comes to this specific field. Let me start with Ritesh. Ritesh, first to you. Is this new what WhatsApp is telling us, or are they just making it official?
No. I think this is new, and this is embarrassing for them also, because if you see, when WhatsApp started, and year after year, every time from the time they have started, their first statement says that the respect for privacy, users, the respect for privacy is in our DNA. Even when Facebook acquired it, that time they still made the same statement that it is in our DNA, and no matter what, we are not going to share with Facebook. And then 2 years back, when they started sharing, we had an option of not to share and say no, that we don't want to share. But this time it's like my way or the highway. So this is definitely new. And like when you were saying, Tanvi, that it is more for the WhatsApp for business users, then you have the policy only for that particular app, because I mean that app is different. Like you have WhatsApp, the usual WhatsApp, and then you also have the WhatsApp for business. Then keep it only for WhatsApp for business. I mean that privacy policy should be only for them. And if you look at the see, I'll tell you, I'm not just trying to be like a privacy paranoid person and shifting to Signal. Of course, for me, Signal is way better than Telegram. Where you Telegram, has Elon Musk also said, is like a competitor for Netflix, and a place where all movies are leaked. So I definitely trust Signal more. Um but then if you see over here, what did we tie up for? Like your question was, our data is all over, fine, but then what I chat with somebody is not all over. That was there only and only in WhatsApp. They assured me about the privacy. We were, as an investigator also, because I had to make some very confidential calls, I could trust only and only the WhatsApp call. I no longer trust it, Tanvi.
You no longer trust the WhatsApp calls or messages. I think many of us, bigger skeptics than you, maybe Ritesh, started having those doubts a long time ago. But let me ask this question, and Pavel, maybe you can come in on this. What does WhatsApp mean when they say commercial data or commercial transactions or information? What does that even mean?
Right now, it's a very gray area because it's not properly defined in that terms and conditions. So, which means that right now, data may be only related to the business account you deal with, but in future, it can expand up to any limit, right? So, we can't really restrict a particular word or the kind of conversation you're having as a commercial terms at this moment. So, it's very difficult to define it in any sort of way.
Is that why there is so much concern? Because we don't know what they mean and where they draw the line. What's exactly commercial or business? Is it for large firms and groups that they may have? Is it also conversations that parents and teachers have about their schoolwork? Is it also residential? RWAs talking about policies for their own. Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, there is a bigger concern here because if you look at the history of Facebook, when it comes to privacy, there have been leaks, and in past also the EU Union they also fined Facebook for not maintaining certain rules. So definitely the concern raised when that large amount of data been shared even to a sister concern party. So just to give it a more detailed view. So when we talk about the number of users in the WhatsApp right now, it's more than 430 million in India. And if you compare that to the total active smartphone users, which is close to around 520 million, which means about 8 out of 10 smartphone users have WhatsApp on their phone. So which eventually means almost everyone using WhatsApp, and by extending these rules of privacy is basically making the data available for everyone using a smartphone in India in a other sense.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the, whether there is any existing protection that we have. Vaishali, let's start with you. When it comes to our privacy, do our laws protect us, or are we just dependent on whatever it is that WhatsApp tells us, and that's about it?
The first point I would like to make here is, are we really surprised at this coming, or we were just all waiting for this and just being oblivious, or perhaps just plain stupid, hoping that a corporate is not going to monetize our data at some point of time?
It started.
Right, there seemed to have been a technical glitch there, Vaishali. I'm not too sure if we still have your line. And I just want to say that some of our guests are getting patched on WhatsApp calls, which is where we are also facing some trouble. But we've used that line for a while now, ever since we went into a work from home model and stopped sending cameras. We'll have to find other ways as well, maybe at some point. Vaishali is back with us. Go ahead, please. Sorry about that glitch.
So to begin with, I would like to point out that Are we really so surprised that a corporate entity has suddenly started or has told us that they are going to monetize our data? It was coming from a long time. Other corporates have done it already. This has been a trend for almost over 2 decades now, where even large companies like Microsoft and other software giants entered India as a market, made all of us use their products, got us hooked onto their softwares, which was freely available in an unlicensed or a cracked form, and then they started monetizing our habits. Similar things happened when we started using other social media platforms without really having any knowledge about how the terms and conditions use and how really our data is getting circulated, used, and monetized. We never cared about our privacy, not we as citizens, neither did our government. Eventually, when the Supreme Court stepped in with the Puttaswamy judgment, it was again about the state versus the citizen and privacy rights, about a citizen's right to be left alone from government surveillance or from government interference, which was already in a way included as part of right to life. However, Puttaswamy judgment also said that even in the digital space, a citizen would have a right of being left alone without government surveillance. But still, private entities are not regulated. We've been discussing about data protection and data privacy laws for quite some time now. And there has not been any legislation around it. Now, all this is an open ground for large corporations to come within the country, use subscriber database for various commercial, though they will say for research purpose or for analytic purpose, there's really not a real answer. And obviously the data is being monetized. This is not happening in the European Union, but this is happening in a country like India, where the law and the legal regime has failed in regulating private entities when it comes to data sharing. So this is my take on this, that unless and until there is a robust legislation around data, which is in the hands of private corporates, this is by contract, and though it is a non-negotiated contract, this is a consent which is a forced consent that WhatsApp takes from us. So it's either take it or leave it. But the entire data sharing is based on a contractual understanding, and then legally, if we say I agree, then we are bound by the contractual terms. And so unless and until there is regulation either as a data protection or even under the Competition Act, which is completely silent on this regime, we are at a receiving end of all these large corporations when it comes to our data.
Okay, but a lot of that, and how are people going to decide that unless we know what exactly does this mean? What amount of our data, or should we just assume that all of our conversations which happen on WhatsApp, whether it's on text or via the calls, is now being scanned by the company, and they're going to use it the way they want to use it for commercial purposes? Is that what it is then, Mr. Pavan Duggal? And if we agree to it, then no law can really give us any other protection because we've agreed to this contract.
Something like if you're going to cut your own hands and put it on the plate of the dining table for WhatsApp to relish, there's no way there's any gum existing anywhere in the world to get these cut arms back on your body. It's a clear realization that you are now facing a momentous moment. Right now, when a corporation like WhatsApp can actually threaten and blackmail more than 40 crore users in India to either comply with their privacy policy or leave, I think it's basically a representation of a mindset that's super confident. That's not even considering the prevailing law for the time being in force. That's going far, far beyond the scope of the law. In fact, the proposed privacy policy is in direct contravention of the Information Technology Act 2000, as also the Information Technology Rules 2011, specifically the Information Technology Reasonable Security Practices and Procedures and the Sensitive Personal Data or Information Rules 2011. So I think you have to make a choice. The problem is they have been sharing your data, but then we were okay with that. come to 2016, and they started sharing your data with Facebook and Facebook group of companies. From the very beginning, their terms and conditions said whatever you're going to publish on WhatsApp, audio, video, image, text is public information. You have no privacy on the same. Now the problem is under the amended terms, they are going far beyond and are incorporating within their ambit all kinds of sensitive personal data, all transactional data, including details pertaining to all transactions done, the method and mode of payment, whether it's credit card, debit card details, internet banking details, the quantum of the transaction, the location of the person who's doing the transaction, and the internet protocol address. So it's now going into a space where it's breaching your personal privacy. And in case if you're going to sleep on top of it, then you can be guaranteed of one thing, that once your privacy evaporates in the cyberspace, thanks to your continuing to accept these amended terms and conditions of the privacy policy, you will have nobody but yourself to blame. Yes, you can look up to the government, but the fact is the government has been a mute spectator. Here is one of the biggest corporations which openly flouting and contravening the provisions of the Indian law. It's actually even suggesting a challenge to the cyber sovereignty of the Indian government. But the
Okay.
Indian government has not really responded back. So at least whatever it's in your power and possession, do that to protect your own data, to protect your privacy, and try to educate and sensitize those around you as well.
Which is what? What is that then? Is it to say, oh, get off WhatsApp? Is that because the WhatsApp is currently telling us this is the way it is, these are the rules now?
I think the messaging is very clear. If they can be unilateral in imposing this blackmailing onto us, I think we can be unilateral in saying, thank you, sir, we don't require your stand or your platform. We go on to the next better available platform, which is Signal. Signal is, I believe, on a much higher pedestal than WhatsApp. It's respecting your privacy. There's a documented incident where Signal has refused to grant the back-end keys of encryption of the various users to the Australian government, which they wanted under the Australian anti-encryption law. But Signal said, sorry, we cannot really share this private information of our users, and therefore we exit from Australia and will no longer be doing business in Australia. So here is a documented case of a not-for-profit organization that's actually stood for protecting the privacy rights of its users. And I see no reason why people should not shift here, specifically when even the levels of security that are now being adopted by Signal are on a much more better pedestal than WhatsApp. The problem is WhatsApp has been a genius in terms of mass communication.
Yeah.
They've been able to get this color in the minds of people that it's the most secure because it's end-to-end encrypted. What WhatsApp has failed to tell you is that your data prior to sending the message is unencrypted, and after you receive the message is unencrypted. And it's very capable and easy for anyone to go ahead and hack WhatsApp. And there have been n number of cases of hacking per se. Also significant to note is that the privacy policy amended talks nothing about cybersecurity. It talks, I will be sharing your data with not just Facebook group of companies, but also all my business partners, business associates, third parties, and independent service providers. But it does not even give you a hint of what kind of cyber security measures are they going to take so as to protect the authenticity and veracity of the said data. So effectively, you are going to be on their mercy. You have a choice to make. Would you want to be in the mercy of an organization that is going to prejudicially impact your privacy and your digital future? Or would you want to take an assertive step towards protection of your own privacy?
Okay.
The choice will be yours.
In fact, I just want to add to this, because while we are debating here whether we should be on WhatsApp or go to another platform which may be more safe for us, or at least give us our our privacy more than WhatsApp is willing to do now, I also want to highlight that the traders body CAIT has actually written to the government and to the information and technology minister seeking the government's intervention at this point of time, and they are saying that the government needs to stop WhatsApp from implementing this new privacy norm, because this is going to become very difficult, or just go ahead and completely ban WhatsApp altogether and its parent company Facebook. Now, I don't know whether these are genuine concerns that they have about the new policy, or just also a reason to maybe demand action against WhatsApp. But this has now also reached the government's doorstep, because there are associations that have written to the government seeking its intervention on this. But let's talk about what it is for us. And what should we do? Ritesh, now, you, like you said, you at one point trusted WhatsApp. You use that end-to-end encryption for your calls and your texts. Now you don't anymore, and you're willing to go to a Signal. The question that many have asked us is, how do we know Signal is any better? Do we know enough about Signal? What if tomorrow they want to start monetizing their platform and they come up with rules that we don't know about? They start using the information or leaking the data, and we will never find out.
See, well, Signal is something like what I would compare it with, like Linux. It's a complete open source thing. So it's a not-for-profit thing. They are not going to like kind of, they can't sell it. The source code is available out over there. If a particular group goes and says that, okay, this is the UI and this is how Signal is, and I'm going to sell it off, I'm sure there are the other programmers who will take the source code, make it better, and again offer it for for free. So this is the beauty about open source products. So whether it has been Linux or whether it is now Signal. So it's very important that people, like, I'm sure all the panelists over here also agree that Signal is way, way, way better than WhatsApp and even Telegram. In fact, let's not forget, even in Telegram, you don't have end-to-end encryption unless you use a secret chat service. But in Signal, it is like by default. And looking at the number of downloads, I think the signal has gone to everyone that Signal is going to be there for long. So it's like really a wake up call, not just for Facebook group of companies, including WhatsApp, but even for the other tech giants, like Mr. Dugal rightly said, that look, if you're going to do this, something like this unilaterally, we have better options. And definitely we do have better options. Tanvi.
Okay, Nikhil, good evening to you as well, and thanks, for being part of this. Today, we're trying to address as many queries as we can for people to understand what WhatsApp's new policy means. Does it really make a difference, or was it already happening? Have we already lost all of our privacy to the internet? And does changing to another platform really help?
Well, Tanvi, I think changing to a more secure platform and a platform that doesn't collect or share as much data is always a better idea. I would disagree with the idea that we've lost all of our privacy because there is a future for us in terms of how much information we give about ourselves with the apps and services that we use. At this point in time, nothing is 100% in a manner that we're not sharing any data, but that doesn't mean that 80% isn't there or 40% isn't there, right? We can always improve from where we are. There is a global market failure in privacy. Many of these apps are collecting a disproportionate amount of data about us. This particular WhatsApp policy does not affect the messages that we send, but it does affect other metadata, which can be taken by Facebook to either improve its services or to serve advertising to users. And so there are a large number of people who are adopting apps like Signal right now, and as Ritesh was saying, Signal is a better choice. WhatsApp does use the Open Signal protocol, so it's not that it's not secure. I would advocate against using, services like Telegram for private communications because it's not as secure as WhatsApp or Signal are. So let's this is what the changes in the policy are an important step in the sense that the fact is that much of this data was already a part of the 2016 policy, which many people agreed to or they deferred. Now the changes of this policy is mandatory, and therefore people aren't being given a choice. They can either take it or leave it. As a private corporation, WhatsApp has every right to do this, but users also have the right to walk away from the service and go do something else. It's just that it becomes so much more difficult to shift out of WhatsApp because all of our friends and family are there, especially for older users who find it difficult to adapt to new services and new platforms. It might be even more difficult. It's the same user experience might not be there, but I think all of us should make that choice. And like I would say that WhatsApp is not the worst app on your platform. It's not the best if you have Signal, but it's still not the worst. Everyone needs to look at their phones for apps, for flashlight apps and many other apps, and start removing those first. In as a part of this process of becoming a little more secure and a little more private going forward.
Okay, so let me also take it a step further, Nikhil, and ask you to
Hmm.
again break it down to say what is it that the users should be concerned about. As far as our locations are concerned, our pictures are concerned, they're pretty much available across platforms, public, private, out there on the internet. We've now read
Yes.
reports where repeatedly WhatsApp private group links have also appeared on the internet, and anybody can, click on those links to join these groups. Those reports have
Hmm.
also emerged. So now to say that, there is still some part of our privacy and semblance of that we should be able to protect. What is that we're talking about?
No, so for example, Signal doesn't allow people to take screens. You can have there is an option in Signal to disallow people from taking screenshots. It was the first app that launched disappearing messages, where after a period of time designated by you, the messages in that particular chat would disappear and not be available anymore. So there are these provisions which exist, and but the thing about private group links being available on the internet, that can happen with Telegram, it can happen with Signal, it can happen with every other app. So I don't think that's that much of a concern, because if you're enabling it and someone's able to share it, then obviously they can join. Um, I think we just have to be careful about how we use some of these services, in terms of how often we use them. When they're collecting location information, you can go to your app settings on your phones and turn off those that data which you don't want to give to that particular app. So for example, for most of my apps, many of them require location information to be used, but some of them track your location information all the time. So you can change that particular setting to say track my location only when I'm using the app. So there are small things that all of us can do to make ourselves a little more private. I know 100% privacy is not possible in the digital age, and but we can at least strive towards that end. I did also hear that there is a problem that like if we had a privacy law, then this data sharing between the two services would not have been possible. I think that's a bit of a stretch. There is a challenge in the Supreme Court to WhatsApp's first privacy policy. The Supreme Court hasn't heard that challenge for a while now, but it depends on whether the government wants to allow that sharing of data or not. And I think that's where the Competition Commission also should have come in. Um, at the in Europe, that data sharing is not allowed, but in India it was. And so if we didn't stop it in 2016, I think it's a bit of a stretch to expect for it to be stopped in 2020. This we had an opportunity at that point in time. The only recourse that us as users have is to migrate to another platform.
Okay. All right. Vaishali, would you like to come in here on the legal aspect of it, or like Nikhil says, the only option we have right now is just to switch platforms?
I quite agree with what Nikhil is saying that, of course, as a user, you need to be more aware. I think change of these privacy policies have actually kicked off a debate which is now much more on a public platform. All these debates have used to happen only with security experts, privacy pros, and academics, and perhaps a smaller lot. Now it is out in the open. As you said, every household is talking about it. I think that changes a lot because of the enhanced awareness, which also means there is a collective power of making decisions of using a platform or otherwise. There's also more collective power, which eventually pushes change. It could be a legislative change. It could be change to make our governments think more from their citizens' point of view in terms of privacy, where privacy was not really a narrative for the longest period of time. So yes, we did lose out on an opportunity of cross-platform data sharing or data sharing between two companies at an earlier extent. But though it does sound a little stretched that will we go down the same route in the immediate next 4 years, but I don't want to lose hope. At some point of time, we would want to reach a standard, a gold standard with GDPR achieved in the European Union, because EU was very privacy pro for the longest period of time. India was not. We still are struggling with the concept of, and the commonest question that we all have is, what will it really affect? What will it really take away from me? Is it taking away my money? It could be the first question that a normal or commoner may have. But it's not always just about that. It's also about, do I want to be watched by a third party, and third parties that I don't even know who's watching me and stalking me all the time? Am I really up to that? Or do I want better control over my data? Do I want better control over where this data is shared? Do I want better control about how it gets used and monetized? So this is something that I would want, and the narrative should go in that direction, which
Okay.
eventually will bring about change.
Okay, I have a few
If I
callers who
may
are on the
add
phone line,
something,
viewers, but
if
before I
Tanvi, if
go
I
to
may
them,
add
yeah.
something,
Yeah, Nikhil, go ahead.
Tanvi, if I may just add something, I think it's important to remember that the chats that take place on WhatsApp are end-to-end encrypted, which means that even WhatsApp can't read those chats. One major privacy concern that I have is that the government of India, along with the US, UK, and many and the Western powers, has signed a letter to Facebook not to roll out end-to-end encryption on its apps. And there's a case in the Supreme Court where this end-to-end encryption is actually being challenged, where the government of India is opposing it, and if it gets removed, then our chats will be much less secure. There will be much less privacy. So it's one thing to discuss Facebook getting access to data, but Facebook just wants to make money off us. There's also an extreme risk of the government getting access to all of our communications, and that sovereign power being misused can basically have repercussions for our democracy and our individual lives. So I think we need to also put this into perspective, that there are greater threats to privacy right now. Our chats are currently secure, but there's a future where they might not be.
Okay, fair enough. I take that point as well. The larger fear which is there in many people's minds is when the government begins to get access to this kind of information, whereas right now corporates are trying to just mint money off your information, but that could also lead to many detrimental situations. Quickly, let's go across to Mr. Narsimhan on the phone line calling us from Bengaluru. Good evening. Do you have a specific query?
Yeah. Good evening, madam. Thank you very much for patching me to the program. For the experts, I have two queries. One, I heard about the Elements app being developed by Art of Living Foundation, that is in Bangalore, which is Indian made, and servers will be in India only. They are not going to place the server anywhere around. So the data will be safe. It will be well within the Indian geographical jurisdiction legally. So it will be, others cannot hack it. So that being the case, I think more information need to be given on Elements, that particular app. That is one query, sir. Second in the query, I want clarification from the experts is, when the similar thing happened with Research in Motion, RIM company, with respect to BlackBerry, not sharing the end-to-end encrypted data, then Government of India made a rule that either you quit India, you go out of India, or share the information with our government. So that BlackBerry was able to, they actually came to the Indian, they agreed to Indian demand. So they're sharing information regarding any type of security issues like that with Government of India. Same thing can be done here also. Why should we try to believe from Signal or anything? I know Signal has been downloaded maximum number of times in a couple of days, but it's not going to solve the problem. When you go for end-to-end encryption here, if Element app gives that facility to me, anyway, I'll be happy to share it. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Narasimhan. I'll get a response from our experts in just a bit, but if I can very quickly also bring in Murli, who's on the phone line calling us from Mumbai. Good evening, Murli. Do you have a query?
Yeah, my quick query is on Signal, specifically, meaning I know everybody is trying to move to Signal. But once everybody moves to Signal, then the problem is again the same as WhatsApp, right? Somebody will buy Signal, and then you'll have the same problem where that Signal will probably be sharing it with other multinational companies who buys them. Is that something that we have to keep in mind always, or is it something that we require the government to handle? Because I would assume that maybe we should have stronger policies for what a company could share and what a company should not be sharing.
Okay.
That's my question. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for both of those questions. So, are we staring at a situation where you keep changing platforms as one after the other begins to find ways to monetize the large amount of data that they have via their users? And secondly, are there other Indian apps which will be safer and will protect our privacy more than the international ones? Nikhil, do you want to take these?
Yeah, Tanvi, firstly, the Signal app is run by the Open Signal Foundation, which is a charitable non-trust foundation that is not looking to make money off the app. They work on donations. They've also, by the way, got a significant amount of donation from Brian Acton, who was the founder of WhatsApp and who quit WhatsApp after this data sharing began and after with WhatsApp, right? So Brian Acton has committed to supporting Signal, and I would say that given the fact that that it is tested for security by experts who try and break it, it is far more secure to use a tried and tested, globally acknowledged by cybersecurity experts kind of an app, as opposed to something that may have been developed in India that might be Indian, might be storing the servers, the data in India, but there is no community testing of that to see whether it is actually secure or not. So I would advise against using something that is not tried and tested, and just because someone's claiming that it is secure does not necessarily make it secure.
Okay. Pavel, would you want to comment on this as well? Does it make a difference or if we have the servers in India where they can be better regulated? And to the other question that the viewer was asking, do we just then otherwise keep shifting platforms?
Well, just because you are an Indian and you want your servers in India is not a guarantee that you're not going to be hacked. In fact, India is a very fertile ecosystem which is regularly being targeted by hackers, by state and non-state actors, given the fact that India does not have a dedicated legal framework on cybersecurity. Also, given the fact that we don't have data protection or on privacy, we are like a very fertile ground for anyone to go ahead and target all kinds of data, not just normal data, but even sensitive personal data as such. So I don't agree with the phenomenon that just because there's going to be data localization in India, that will be automatically transforming itself into an equation of the data being more secure. But regarding the question of what about Signal going rogue tomorrow or going the WhatsApp way tomorrow, I think we are not soothsayers. We can only take intelligent decisions based on facts which are available today. And given the fact that the genealogy of this entity which is running Signal is on a distinct platform than that of a commercial entity, I see no reason why they are likely to go in that particular direction. In fact, they have a mission, and the mission is documented, and the mission is also supported by charity donations and otherwise. So I think we don't really have any ground to be suspicious of the Signals of the world. Yes, if tomorrow some events take place which would want you to make you far more suspicious of Signal, maybe at that point of time you can always have a choice to go ahead and transmigrate on to yet another available best alternative. But in current day scenario, the best alternative that you have right now is Signal, which is far more superior than even WhatsApp in whatever direction that you would want to look at, whether it's privacy, whether it's security, and more significantly, whether it's the commitment of the organization to share information. Because Signal has refused to share information with Australia under the Australian anti-encryption law when being asked to do so by the Australian government. And they did so primarily on the ground that they said that this would violate the privacy of their users, and they would rather prefer not to operate in Australia rather than to comply with the Australian legal request of access to the back-end encryption of their users. So I think a documented case is there that it's better to go for Signal right now than for other alternatives.
Okay. All right, so that's as far as the doubt that many people right now have, and I think if a large number of people do decide to opt for a more private platform, a more secure platform, and begin to shift out and don't want to really adhere to these new policy changes that WhatsApp has brought about, either WhatsApp relooks at it, or it stares at perhaps a situation where many people begin to then move to another platform, which would mean that entire groups. Now, I don't know, on a lighter note, maybe that helps us get rid of this WhatsApp University menace that we are tackling on a daily basis, or maybe that kind of fake news and those messages are also transferred to Signal. I don't know what's going to happen there, but Pavel Naya, the question to you: how do we protect ourselves in a larger setup? Not a specific company, but a user. How does a user ensure that we have some amount of our privacy still left?
Yeah, thank you for having me, first of all. I want to put a couple of points regarding the encryptions that we are talking about here. So there are mainly two kind of encryptions out there. One is end-to-end, which is client-to-client, which means the first user who is sending the data to the end user who is receiving it. And it only be decrypted at those 2 points. And then there are other encryptions available on the market, which are client to server based, which means when you are sending anything, it can be decrypted at the server level. So when we talk about the kind of encryption available in different apps, we in the Signal specifically, it using client to client open Signal protocol, which is like more secure at this moment compared to other available alternative like Telegram, which have the combination of both
Yes.
client to client as well as client to server. So that's been said. There are other ways, obviously, to protect yourself. Obviously, some of them been highlighted by Nikhil here. Be selective what to share with the third party, or when you're choosing a service, choose which is more trusted by the advisor. So that is one way of going through it. The other way is obviously, whenever you are being talk about privacy and security, it's always a concern of the citizen as well. So raise it around your neighbors, around your family, so that it's being talked about in the political system. And once that been started, we can see lot of discussion happening on this parameter, and probably a better law in place, to make it legally available for everyone to follow the same rule, rather than any particular organization making it on their own behalf. So those are the couple of points I like to add here.
Okay, fair enough. In fact, there is merit to what you're saying, that at least there should be a basic uniform set of laws that all organizations need to follow, because we cannot expect, honestly, we can't expect every single user who's out there to understand the nuances, and what's really at stake for their own privacy. I still have so many times people asking me this question: so what is it that we're losing? What's the problem here if they know about my location or my preferences, about what I like and don't like, and accordingly they serve me these ads? What's the harm in that? So a lot of us don't understand. It's perhaps better to have some basic set of rules to protect our information, to protect our privacy, to tell the companies this is where we draw the line, and you cannot be using our data for any other purposes. But beyond that, it is also for us to make ourselves more aware. At the end of the day, it is our information and our privacy, and we are the ones who should be able to decide what we do want and what we don't. And you've heard the experts on our panel. I think unanimously they all say that there are safer options available. The choice, of course, is yours, what you want to do. Maybe if enough of them begin to migrate from WhatsApp to elsewhere, WhatsApp will change its policy. But will it get the trust back? That's the big question. Thank you so much to the panelists for joining us on this conversation.